Ellie pressed her glossy lips together and studied the girl in the mirror. Perfect. The mascara framed her wide green eyes just right. The low-cut tank top hugged every curve. Her blonde curls tumbled past her shoulders, soft and golden under the bathroom light. She looked gorgeous. She knew it. Any boy who saw her tonight would stop and stare. There was just one problem. 30 minutes ago, Ellie had been Danny. But we will get to that. Let's start at the beginning, half an hour earlier, when the world still made sense. Danny studied his reflection and liked what he saw. The dark blue button-down fit him well, and his hair fell in just the right way. Sharp. That was the word. He tilted his chin, turned slightly to one side, and grinned at the boy looking back at him. Strong jaw, broad shoulders, the faintest shadow of stubble along his chin that made him feel older than his 18 years. Amber would notice. She always noticed when he put in the effort, and tonight he had gone the extra mile. He had ironed the shirt himself, borrowed his father's good cologne, and spent 10 minutes getting his hair to look like he had not spent any time on it at all. The kind of effortless cool that required serious effort. He pictured her face, the way her dark blue eyes would light up when she saw him, the way she would lean into his arm when they walked, pressing close enough that he could smell her shampoo, the way her fingers would find his in the dark of the movie theater, threading between his knuckles like they had done it 1,000 times. Amber was gorgeous. That was not opinion. That was fact agreed upon by every breathing male at Westfield High. And she had chosen Danny. Out of every guy who tripped over himself trying to talk to her, she had picked him. The thought still made his chest expand with pride. Like most 18-year-old boys, Danny spent a considerable amount of time thinking about what might happen when the two of them finally had a real night alone together. Not just the movie and the drive home and the goodnight kiss on her porch. Something more. Something that all the other guys at school already bragged about in the locker room, leaning against the metal doors with smug grins and exaggerated details. Danny wanted his own story. He wanted to belong to that club. Maybe tonight. Maybe this was the night everything changed. He stepped out of the bathroom, grinning to himself, and headed down the hall toward his bedroom. Just needed to grab his jacket and his wallet. The evening was close now. He could almost taste it. The car keys were in his pocket. Amber was probably getting ready right this minute. In an hour, they would be together. He had no way of knowing that in 30 minutes, he would not recognize his own reflection. That the boy in the dark blue button-down would vanish, replaced by a blonde girl in a tank top who wore his memories inside a body he had never asked for. That a plastic wand with a glittery star, held in the small hand of a 9-year-old in butterfly wings, was about to rewrite everything he understood about himself. But that was 30 minutes away. Right now, Danny was just a boy walking down a hallway, thinking about a girl, with no idea that he was about to become one. A blur of silver and glitter shot past him. Lily! His little sister was 9 years old, exactly half his age, and right now she looked like she had raided every craft bin in the house. She wore a shimmering silver dress that pooled around her ankles. Enormous butterfly wings rose from her back, wired and wobbly, catching the hallway light. A plastic tiara sat crooked on her head. In one hand, she clutched a wand topped with a glittery silver star that shed tiny sparkles with every step. She skidded to a stop in front of him and blocked his path. "Will you play with me?" she asked, eyes wide, voice full of hope. Danny sidestepped her gently. "Can't do it, kiddo. I'm heading out on a date." "But I'm playing fairy princess!" She stomped one bare foot against the carpet. Her lower lip pushed out in a dramatic pout. Danny chuckled despite himself. "Boys don't play fairy princess, Lily. Go on, run along. I've got to finish getting ready." "No!" The word came out long and loud and furious. "It's not fair. You never play with me. Never ever." "I don't have time for this right now." He started moving again, stepping around her. "Go play in your room." She switched tactics instantly. The screaming vanished, replaced by a sugary sweetness that she clearly believed was irresistible. She clasped her hands together and tilted her head. Please? Pretty please? Just for a little while? I already told you, sis. Boys don't play fairy princess. That did it! Lily erupted. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She yelled. She stamped. She called him the worst brother in the entire world, and possibly the entire universe. Danny kept walking, shaking his head. Girls! They were strange creatures, even the tiny ones. If you were my sister instead of my brother, you'd play with me, she shouted after him, planting her fists on her hips. But I'm not, Danny said without turning around. He was 3 steps from his door now. Almost safe. Behind him, Lily raised her wand. Her voice dropped to something low and fierce, something that didn't quite sound like a 9-year-old girl playing pretend. I wish you weren't a boy. I wish you were my sister instead of my brother. Then you'd play with me. Danny stepped into his room and shut the door. He leaned against it and exhaled. He needed a barrier between himself and that tiny hurricane, at least long enough to grab his things and get out the door. But something was wrong. It started as a tingle. Faint at first, like the buzz of static electricity, running across his skin from his fingertips to his scalp. Not painful, not exactly unpleasant, but deeply, unmistakably wrong. Every nerve in his body hummed with it. He raised his hands to his face on instinct, and the wrongness doubled. His skin was different, softer, smoother. The angles of his jaw had shifted. His fingers traced unfamiliar contours where familiar ones should have been. Then he felt something else, a pressure against the insides of his upper arms, something on his chest that had not been there moments ago, something that was pushing his shirt forward, stretching the fabric. Danny looked down. 2 mounds rose beneath the dark blue cotton, tight, firm, unmistakable. His hands moved to them before his brain gave permission, and he felt their weight, full and heavy and still growing. The fabric pulled tighter with every passing second. His breath caught in his throat. A scream built behind his teeth but refused to come out. He stumbled to the mirror. The face staring back at him was not his own. It shared certain features, a resemblance around the eyes, the general shape of the mouth, but the nose was smaller and more delicate. The cheekbones sat higher. The eyebrows had thinned into soft, elegant arches. And there was something else, a quality he could only describe as prettiness, woven into every line and curve. No, it can't be. His hair was changing too. It grew longer as he watched, thickening and curling, turning from sandy brown to a warm, honey blonde. It spilled past his ears, brushed his shoulders, and kept going, tumbling down toward the middle of his back. Something made him look at his hands. They were small now, delicate. His fingers had grown slender, his nails longer, his wrists so thin he could have wrapped his other hand entirely around one. He was shorter, too. The mirror confirmed it. Inches had vanished from his frame. His broad, blocky shoulders had narrowed into something slight and dainty. The muscles in his arms had softened and smoothed away. The blood drained from his face as the full weight of understanding crashed down on him. Lily's wish was coming true. He was becoming a girl. His hands flew downward on pure instinct. He needed to check. He needed to know. But when his fingers pressed between his legs, the confirmation hit him like a sledgehammer. There was nothing there, nothing familiar. Only a small, soft mound where everything male had been. The anatomy was unmistakable. Female. Completely, undeniably female. Danny staggered backward, his knees buckled. He caught himself against the edge of the desk and gripped it hard, knuckles white against the wood. This was not possible. This was not happening. People did not just change. Little sisters did not wave toy wands and rewrite biology. But his body told a different story than his logic, and his body was winning the argument. Then he noticed the room. It had started changing too. His poster of Black and Surge, the one he had bought at their concert last summer, was gone. In its place hung a glossy image of Ryan Mayer, that baby-faced pop singer whose music made Danny want to claw his ears off. Every girl at school had his face plastered inside her locker, and now he grinned down from Danny's wall with perfect teeth and styled hair. Beside it, the swimsuit model poster had vanished. A muscular guy in a Speedo flexed where she used to be, oiled skin catching studio light. Danny's stomach turned. His bed was different. A canopy frame arched overhead now, draped in white lace. The sheets beneath it were crisp and pale, and the pillow shams bore delicate pink roses stitched in careful embroidery. A plush teddy bear leaned against one pillow. A stuffed kitten with button eyes sat beside it. Danny spun toward the closet. The door stood open, and what hung inside made his chest tighten. Skirts, blouses, sundresses in soft pastels, cardigans, a denim jacket with rhinestones along the collar. Every hanger held something that belonged to a teenage girl, and not a single item belonged to him. In the corner, the laundry basket confirmed the nightmare. Panties in assorted colors spilled over the rim, bras tangled among them, delicate fabrics he had never touched in his life, now apparently his own. The desk had transformed into a vanity station. Tubes of mascara and lipstick lay scattered across it. Colorful jars of nail polish stood in a neat row, pinks and reds and a shimmery lavender. A wooden jewelry box sat open, its velvet compartments filled with rings and chains and small sparkling things. That detail triggered a new awareness. He felt weight on his earlobes. His hands flew up and found long, dangling earrings swaying against his neck. Rings circled his slender fingers. Bracelets clinked softly on both wrists. A thin necklace rested cool against his collarbone. His hair had settled now, falling well below his shoulders in loose golden curls, and the growth on his chest had finally stopped. He glanced down and saw the tops of two full, rounded curves exposed above a fitted tank top. A tank top. He had been wearing a button-down shirt, the dark blue one he had chosen so carefully for his date with Amber. Now it was gone, replaced by a snug tank top that hugged every new contour of his torso. Beneath it, he could feel the firm press of a bra, its straps sitting on his narrow shoulders, its band cinched around his smaller ribcage. His slacks were gone too. A skirt hung from his waist instead, light and airy, ending above his knees. When he shifted his weight, the fabric swayed, and then settled against his legs. Smooth legs. Completely, impossibly smooth. Shaved. Bare. Feminine. He stood there, frozen, staring at the stranger in the mirror. A gorgeous young girl stared back. Pretty face, full chest, soft curves that flowed from waist to hip in a shape that would turn heads. Everything about her screamed female, from the arch of her brows to the click of the heels on her feet. Heels. He was wearing heels. His little sister had done this. Somehow, impossibly, her wish had rewritten everything. His body, his room, his clothes. His entire world had been rebuilt around a girl who did not exist 5 minutes ago. Rage cut through the panic like a blade. Lily! He had to find her. He had to make her reverse this, undo it, wave that ridiculous wand, and put everything back the way it was. If she had the power to do this, she had the power to fix it. He yanked the door open and checked her room first. Empty. Toys scattered across the floor, but no Lily. Then he heard her downstairs, the rapid patter of small feet on hardwood, the faint sound of her humming to herself. He hesitated at the top of the stairs. If he went down there, his mother might see him. How would he even begin to explain this? What words existed for telling your own mother that your 9-year-old daughter had magically turned your son into a girl? But he had no choice. Every second he stayed like this felt like another second the change might become permanent. He started down the stairs. The click of his heels against each step echoed through the house. Sharp, rhythmic, distinctly feminine. And worse than the sound was the feeling. His hips moved differently. His center of gravity had shifted. Each step carried a natural sway that he had never learned and could not seem to stop. He did not just look like a girl, he walked like one. His body knew how, even though his mind was screaming. Tears burned behind his eyes. He blinked them back and kept going. He found Lily in the living room. She had arranged a semicircle of dolls on the carpet, each one propped up in a tiny chair, and she knelt in the middle of them like a queen holding court. Her butterfly wings bobbed as she turned. "Look what you did to me!" Danny's voice broke the silence, and the sound that came out of his mouth stopped him cold. It was higher, melodic, soft and unmistakably feminine, with a gentle lilt that belonged to a young woman, not an 18-year-old boy. The words were his. The voice was a stranger's. Lily's face lit up like a sunrise. She leaped to her feet, scattering two dolls sideways. "You're a girl now!" she squealed, bouncing on her toes with pure, unfiltered delight. "Obviously," Danny snapped, though the sharp tone lost all its edge in that new airy voice. "Now change me back, right now, before anyone sees me like this." "This is so cool," Lily breathed, ignoring him entirely. Her eyes roamed over him from head to toe, drinking in every detail with the satisfied expression of a kid who had just unwrapped the best birthday present of her life. "Now I have a sister. Mom always said that if she ever had another girl, she was going to name her Ellie." She beamed up at him. "So that's what I'll call you." "Hi, Ellie," Lily sang out, waving her wand in a triumphant little circle. "I'm not Ellie," Danny fired back, "and I'm not a girl." "Yes, you are." Lily dissolved into giggles, doubling over with her butterfly wings shaking behind her. She clearly considered this the greatest achievement of her entire 9 years on the planet. Danny dropped to his knees in front of her, bringing himself down to her eye level. Desperation clawed at his chest. "Please, Lily, I am begging you. Change me back. I'll do anything you want. Anything. I'll play your little games. I'll be whatever character you need. Just please, please undo this." Lily stuck her fingers in her ears. "I'm not listening. La 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 la. You can't let anyone see me like this." Danny's voice cracked, that new feminine pitch climbing higher with panic. "I'll give you my entire allowance for the whole month. I'll do your chores on top of mine, every single one. Name your price, Lily, whatever it takes. Just change me back." Lily lowered her hands slowly. A cunning light flickered in her young eyes, and for a moment she looked far older than 9. "You'll play fairy princess with me?" she asked. "Right now?" Danny exhaled hard. "But Amber is coming here any minute, so we can go out on our date. Can't we play after I get back? I promise I will." "No." Lily crossed her arms. "Play with me now, or I won't change you back." She paused, then added with deliberate sweetness, "Ellie." Danny closed his eyes, his fists clenched at his sides. The skirt brushed against his smooth knees. The earrings swayed against his neck. Every sensation reminded him that he had zero leverage here. "Okay," he said, the word dragging out of him like a splinter from skin. "Fine. How do you play fairy princess?" Lily erupted with joy. She bounced twice, clapped her hands, and immediately launched into full director mode. "First, I'll be Celeste, the fairy princess. You're the evil queen. This is my pony, Star." She pointed at a worn stuffed horse propped against the couch cushion. "Now, you've got me imprisoned in the castle tower, but the handsome prince is going to try to rescue me, and you have to." "Lily, I know you want to play, but your sister needs to get ready for her date." The voice came from the doorway, and it hit Danny like a bucket of ice water. He looked up. His mother stood there, leaning against the frame with a warm, easy smile. She wore her reading glasses pushed up on her head, and she gazed at the two of them with the patient expression of a woman who had broken up 1,000 sibling negotiations. "But Mom!" Lily protested, stamping her foot. "Ellie can play with you some other time, sweetheart," their mother replied gently. Danny's mind short-circuited. His mother had just rescued him from the torture of playing pretend, and under normal circumstances, he would have felt nothing but gratitude. But nothing about this was normal. She had called him Ellie. She had referred to him as Lily's sister. She stood there looking at him with complete calm, as though the girl in the tank top and skirt was exactly what she expected to see. No shock, no confusion, no screaming. She had forgotten he was her son. She believed, fully and naturally, that he had always been her daughter. "Mom!" Danny started, not even sure what he intended to say. "Yes, Ellie?" she replied, raising her eyebrows. Ellie. The name landed on him like a stone dropped into still water. If his own mother saw him as a girl, then so would everyone else. His teachers, his friends. Every person he had ever known would look at him and see a girl named Ellie. They would remember a girl named Ellie. The boy named Danny would not exist in anyone's memory but his own. The room tilted. He steadied himself against the arm of the couch. "You can play later, girls," his mother continued, already moving on, her tone brisk and practical. "And we can talk later, Ellie. Right now you need to finish your makeup, and your hair needs fixing. Here, let me help." Before Danny could object, before he could form a single word of protest, his mother was behind him. Her hands gathered his long blonde curls with practiced ease, swept them up, and tied them into a high ponytail with a red satin ribbon. Then she opened a small black clutch purse and pulled out a compact and a tube of lip gloss. She tilted his chin up with one finger, studied his face, and touched up his makeup with quick, confident strokes. A dab of color on his lips, a light brush of powder across his cheekbones. She pressed the clutch into his hands. "There, all done. Don't forget your purse." She gave him a meaningful look over the rim of her glasses. "Remember, curfew is 10:30, and remember what we talked about. Don't let him push you into doing something you don't want to do. You might think of yourself as a woman, but you're still so young. You're really just a girl." Danny felt heat flood his face from his collarbone to his hairline. He did not think of himself as a woman. He was a boy. An 18-year-old boy trapped inside a body that had betrayed him completely. And what did she mean by him? Who was he? Danny was waiting for Amber. His date was with Amber. He was not going on a date with some guy. The very idea made his stomach lurch. Then the doorbell rang. Every muscle in Danny's body locked. Panic seized him so completely that he forgot to breathe. What was he going to say to Amber? How could he possibly explain what had happened? Would she even recognize him? Would she run? Would she laugh? His heart hammered against the inside of his ribs as his mother crossed the foyer and reached for the handle. The door swung open. It was not Amber. A boy stood on the front step. Tall, maybe an inch or two above Danny's old height. He wore a fitted leather jacket over a simple white shirt and dark jeans that sat well on his frame. His hair was jet black, thick and slightly tousled, the exact same shade as Amber's. His eyes were deep blue, that same striking sapphire that ran through Amber's entire family. His nose was small and straight, another unmistakable family trait. Danny stared. He could not help it. The resemblance was so strong that for a disorienting moment, he thought he was looking at Amber herself, rebuilt from the ground up into a male form. The same coloring, the same bone structure, the same quiet confidence in the way he stood. But where Amber had been beautiful in a soft, feminine way, this boy was striking in an entirely different direction. His jaw was defined. His shoulders were broad beneath the leather. And when his blue eyes found Danny standing in the hallway, they lit up with a warmth that sent an unfamiliar flutter through Danny's chest. A flutter he immediately tried to crush. It was not just some boy. Danny's mind reeled as the pieces slammed together. The black hair, the blue eyes, the family nose, the same easy confidence, the same natural magnetism, just rebuilt in a completely different body. This was Amber. Amber, who had been his gorgeous girlfriend an hour ago, now stood on his doorstep as a tall, broad-shouldered boy in a leather jacket. "Ryan!" How nice to see you, Danny's mother said warmly, stepping aside to let him in. Thanks, Mrs. H. Same here, the boy replied with a familiar grin that Danny recognized instantly. It was Amber's grin, the same one that used to make his pulse quicken. Now it sat on a masculine jaw, and the effect was completely different. Or at least it should have been. Ryan. Danny's thoughts spiraled. He had become Ellie, and Amber had become Ryan. The wish had not just rewritten Danny. It had rewritten everything and everyone around him, reshaping the entire world to match this new reality. If losing his own body had been devastating, seeing his girlfriend transformed into a boy was somehow equally shattering, because the implication was immediate and unavoidable. He was about to go on a date with a boy. Ryan? Danny said, fighting to keep his new voice steady. I need to run up to my room and grab something before we go. 1 minute. Okay, Ryan said, leaning casually against the doorframe. His blue eyes swept over Danny with open affection. I'll be right here waiting for you, babe. Babe. The word hit Danny like a slap. He did not want to be called babe. He did not want to be looked at the way Ryan was looking at him. This entire situation was a runaway train, and he needed to pull the emergency brake before it carried him any further. He grabbed Lily by the hand and pulled her up the stairs. She yelped in surprise, her butterfly wings catching the banister as they went. He hauled her into his room, shut the door, and turned to face her. Okay, this has gone far enough. His voice shook. Your little joke is completely out of hand. Change me back. Right now. Lily blinked up at him. Back to what? There was no teasing in her tone, no mischief in her eyes. She looked genuinely, thoroughly confused. She had no idea what he was talking about. Lily! Danny crouched down to her level, gripping her small shoulders. Don't you remember what you did to me? A few minutes ago, before we played fairy princess together, you pointed your wand at me and made a wish. Lily scrunched her nose. She thought for a moment, then shook her head slowly. We talked in my room. You helped me put ribbons in my hair. Then you told me how you thought Ryan was so hot and how much you loved him. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she might recite what she had eaten for breakfast. Then we played until he came over. In a day already overflowing with shocks, this one cut the deepest. Lily did not remember. The wish had not simply changed the present, it had rewritten the past. Every memory, every conversation, every moment of their shared history had been rebuilt from the ground up. In Lily's mind, she had always had a big sister named Ellie, who helped her with ribbons and gushed about boys. The brother named Danny, who refused to play fairy princess, had never existed. Only Danny himself remembered the truth. He was utterly, completely alone with it. He swallowed hard. One more try. One last desperate attempt. Lily, I need you to do something for me. Please. It's really important. Sure, sis. Anything, she said brightly. Point your wand at me and say these exact words. I wish that Ellie would change back. Lily gave him a strange look, the kind a child gives an adult who has just said something that makes no sense whatsoever. But she was a good sport. She closed her eyes, raised the glittery wand, aimed it directly at Danny's chest, and spoke with solemn concentration. I wish Ellie would change back. Danny held his breath. He waited for the tingle, that electric hum across his skin, the sign that his cells were shifting, that his body was returning to its rightful shape. Seconds crawled past. He stared down at his hands, willing his fingers to thicken, his nails to shorten, his chest to flatten. Nothing happened. The tingle never came. His body remained exactly as it was. Soft, curved, female. The earrings still dangled, the bra still pressed, the skirt still brushed against his smooth legs. A cold, hollow dread settled into the pit of his stomach. The wish only worked once, in one direction. There was no reversal, no undo button, no magic words that could put him back. He was stuck. Lily was already singing to herself, skipping out the door with her wand trailing sparkles behind her, utterly oblivious to the crisis she had created and could not remember causing. Danny stood alone in the pink and lace bedroom that the universe now insisted was his, staring at the beautiful girl in the mirror, who stared back with terrified eyes. He could hear Ryan downstairs, chatting easily with his mother. Their voices drifted up through the floor, warm and relaxed. His mother laughed at something Ryan said. Just as she had always liked Amber, she clearly adored Ryan. The pattern was identical. Everything in Danny's life had been preserved with surgical precision, except that every element had been flipped to its female counterpart. Same family, same friends, same date. Just a different version of himself at the center of it all. He walked back downstairs, his mind racing through excuses. A headache, a stomach ache, a sudden, overwhelming desire to stay home and reorganize his closet. Anything to avoid getting into that car with Ryan. But when he reached the bottom of the stairs, his thoughts were a tangled mess, and his rehearsed words dissolved the moment Ryan looked up at him. "Ready, babe?" Danny opened his mouth to deliver his excuse. Nothing came out. And before he could recover, before he could find a single coherent syllable, Ryan had taken his hand. The boy's grip was warm and confident, fingers interlacing with Danny's smaller ones as naturally as breathing. Ryan led him through the front door, down the porch steps, and toward the car parked in the driveway. Amber's car. The same red convertible that Danny had always admired, sleek and low and effortlessly cool. When Amber drove it, the combination had been magnetic. A gorgeous girl behind the wheel of a gorgeous car. Every boy at school had envied Danny for riding shotgun. Now Ryan held the passenger door open for him. Danny lowered himself into the seat, the skirt riding up slightly as he sat, and Ryan closed the door with a gentle click. The leather was warm beneath Danny's bare legs. Ryan circled around to the driver's side, slid in, and started the engine. The convertible rumbled to life. Through the windshield, Danny could see his mother waving from the porch. Lily pressed her face against the living room window, grinning and waving both hands. "Your mom is really nice, Ellie," Ryan said, glancing over with that easy smile as he pulled out of the driveway. "You're lucky to have a mom that cool." "Thanks," Danny managed, the single word barely making it past the tightness in his throat. That was exactly the kind of thing Amber would have said. Same warmth, same casual sincerity. Danny's chest ached with the familiarity of it. The original plan had been simple. Danny would take Amber to the movies, buy the tickets, maybe spring for popcorn and sodas, and spend 2 hours sitting close to her in the dark. So it came as no surprise when Ryan steered the red convertible into the theater parking lot. The marquee glowed against the evening sky, and a short line of couples and groups snaked toward the ticket window. Danny reached behind him by pure instinct, fingers searching for his back pocket and the worn leather wallet that always lived there. But his hand found only the smooth fabric of the skirt against his hip. No pocket, no wallet. Then he felt the weight on his shoulder and remembered the small black clutch purse hanging there. He had been carrying it this entire time without even realizing it. He stood there, purse dangling from his shoulder, and watched as Ryan stepped up to the window and paid for both tickets without hesitation. The boy pulled out his wallet, peeled off the bills, and handed Danny his ticket with a casual smile. No discussion, no expectation that Danny would contribute, because Danny was the girl now. And the girl got treated, just as Danny had always treated Amber, buying her ticket and her drink and her snacks without a second thought. The symmetry was suffocating. Danny tried to lose himself once the lights went down. The theater was dark and anonymous, and for a few minutes he almost managed to forget. But the popcorn sat untouched in his lap. His stomach was wound too tight to eat. Every time he reached for a handful, a fresh wave of distress killed his appetite before his fingers reached the bag. Then Ryan's arm settled around his shoulders. The weight of it was warm and solid, draping across the back of Danny's seat and pulling him gently closer. A boy was touching him. A boy's arm rested against the bare skin above his tank top, and the boy's fingers curled lightly around Danny's shoulder, as if they belonged there. That was terrible enough on its own. But what happened next was far worse. Danny's body responded. A warmth bloomed deep inside his chest, spreading outward like ink dropped in water. It was not just physical, it was emotional, enormous, and overwhelming, filling every corner of him until rational thought became almost impossible. He felt safe beneath that arm. He felt wanted. He felt a magnetic pull toward Ryan's body that went far beyond anything he could fight with willpower alone. Before he understood what was happening, he was leaning into Ryan. His head drifted sideways until it rested against the boy's strong shoulder. His body fit there perfectly, nestled into the curve of Ryan's arm, as if the space had been carved specifically for him. And the desire that surged through him in that moment was not the raw, uncomplicated lust he had felt as a boy chasing Amber. This was deeper, richer. It was tenderness and longing, and a desperate wish to be closer, to dissolve the last inch of distance between them. It took every shred of self-control Danny possessed not to tilt his face up and press his lips against Ryan's. "I love you," Danny whispered. The words slipped out before he could catch them, soft and trembling, almost a question. The instant they left his mouth, he wanted to kick himself. Why had he said that? Those 3 words were gasoline on a fire he was desperately trying to extinguish. They would only encourage Ryan, only pull them closer together, only deepen a relationship that Danny needed to escape from, not fall further into. He was not supposed to want a boy. He was not supposed to feel this way. But the emotions coursing through his new body were so powerful, so relentless, that they swept over his resistance like a river over a stone wall. After the credits rolled, Danny seized his chance. He told Ryan that he was not feeling well and wanted to go home. Ryan's face fell. The disappointment in those deep blue eyes was so genuine, so vulnerable, that Danny felt a physical pang of guilt in his chest. "But we talked about trying something new tonight," Ryan said quietly. "Don't you love me?" Danny's breath caught. He knew exactly what Ryan meant. He knew because he had been on the other side of this exact conversation. For weeks, Danny had been gently pressuring Amber, trying to coax her past her hesitation, hoping that each date would be the one where she finally said yes. Now the roles had reversed completely. Ryan was doing to him precisely what he had done to Amber, pushing gently, hopefully, toward intimacy. "It's not that," Danny said quickly. "Well, I love you," Ryan said. His voice was low and earnest, and his eyes never left Danny's face. "You're so beautiful. You're absolutely perfect, Ellie. I think about you constantly. You're the only one for me. I'll love you forever, and only you. I want us to share that. Please, come back to my place tonight." Danny was melting inside. Every word Ryan spoke dissolved another layer of his resistance. His body was answering in ways his mind could not override. A tingling warmth gathered between his legs, building steadily, and then something unfamiliar followed. A sensation he had never experienced before. Something warm and unmistakable. "You're getting me all worked up," Danny breathed, and then froze as he realized he had said it out loud. Ryan's eyes brightened. "So you do want me. I knew it. Let's be together. Right now. Tonight." "I'm not ready yet." The words came out of Danny's mouth, and he almost laughed at the bitter irony. After every excuse Amber had given him, after every time she had asked him to wait, after every night he had driven home frustrated and sworn to himself that he would never, ever turn down an opportunity like this, here he was, doing exactly what Amber had done, saying exactly what Amber had said. "Can we wait just a little longer?" Danny added, his voice small and sincere in a way that surprised even him. "I want it to be really special." If he could find a way back to his old self, none of this would matter. The date, the feelings, the impossible pull toward Ryan. It would all vanish the moment he became Danny again. He just needed time. But then a thought struck Danny like lightning. A devious, brilliant thought. What if the girl in the relationship made a solemn promise that they would be together tomorrow? A real vow, spoken with conviction. He could make that promise tonight as Ellie, buy himself time to figure out how to reverse the wish, and then, when he changed back into Danny, it would be Amber standing there bound by a heartfelt oath. She would have sworn to go all the way. He would be himself again, and she would finally be his. The plan was almost too perfect. Danny looked up at Ryan with wide, earnest eyes. He let the emotions his female body generated work in his favor for once, letting tenderness and sincerity flood his expression. I swear to you upon my heart that tomorrow we will go all the way. I just can't do it tonight. Take me home, and tomorrow we'll finally be together. Ryan's entire face transformed. The disappointment vanished, replaced by a grin so bright it practically lit up the inside of the car. I can live with that, he said, squeezing Danny's hand. Danny said goodnight at the front door, allowing Ryan one quick kiss. The boy's lips were warm and firm, and the contact lasted barely 2 seconds. But Danny's traitorous body erupted in response. Heat rushed through him. His pulse spiked. His knees went soft. He pulled away fast, before the cascade could build into something he could not control. He had to get away from Ryan. Now, before the overwhelming tide of emotion dragged him under completely. These feelings were so powerful, so consuming, that they blotted out rational thought like storm clouds swallowing the sun. How did girls function with this kind of intensity running through them constantly? How did they study, or work, or hold a conversation, when every emotion hit with the force of a tidal wave? Danny hated being a girl. He hated it with every fiber of his being. Inside, the house was quiet. His mother had gone to bed. Lily's door was closed, a thin line of nightlight glowing beneath it. Danny climbed the stairs, entered his room, and shut the door behind him. Getting undressed was its own private horror. He peeled off the tank top, unclipped the bra, stepped out of the skirt, and stood before the mirror in nothing but a pair of panties. The girl reflected back at him was stunning. Curves in all the right places. Smooth, flawless skin. A body that any boy his age would have given anything to touch. And it was his. He was trapped inside it, looking out through pretty eyes at a world that had forgotten he had ever been anything else. He pulled on an oversized sleeping shirt from the dresser. The front read Daddy's Girl in faded pink letters. He stared at those words for a long moment, then decided he lacked the energy to find something less humiliating. Before he climbed into bed, he crept down the hall to Lily's room. The door opened silently. His little sister lay curled beneath her blankets, sound asleep, the tiara still crooked on her head. Danny scanned the room until he spotted the wand on her nightstand, the glittery silver star catching a sliver of light from the hallway. He took it carefully, holding his breath, and retreated back to his own room. Behind his locked door, Danny spent the next hour trying everything. He pointed the wand at his reflection and wished to be a boy again. He wished to be Danny. He wished that the last 24 hours had never happened. He wished that Ryan would become Amber, hoping the reversal might pull him back too. He tried different wordings, different phrasings, different levels of desperation. He closed his eyes and concentrated until his temples throbbed. He whispered. He shouted into his pillow. He held the wand with both hands and poured every ounce of willpower he possessed into a single burning desire to go back. Nothing. Not a tingle, not a shimmer. Not the faintest hint that the wand recognized him at all. Whatever magic Lily had channeled, it had been a one-way door, and it had already closed behind him. He collapsed into bed, pulling the lace-trimmed sheets up to his chin, and prayed. He bargained with every higher power he could think of. Just let him wake up as himself. Let this be a dream, a hallucination, a temporary glitch in reality that would correct itself by morning. He would be a better brother. He would play fairy princess every single day. He would never complain again. Sleep came in broken, miserable fragments. Every position felt wrong. He rolled onto his stomach, and the pressure against his chest jolted him awake. The unfamiliar fullness compressed painfully against the mattress. He shifted onto his back, and the weight of them settled differently, pulling to either side in a way that felt alien and constant. At one point, he reached down absently to scratch an itch, and his fingers found only the smooth, featureless mound between his legs. The absence shocked him awake like a splash of cold water. The nightmares were worse than the waking. In one, he wandered through his school in a wedding dress, walking down an aisle toward Ryan, while every student he had ever known applauded. In another, he stood before a mirror that showed his old male face, but when he reached for the glass, it shattered, and the pieces reflected only Ellie. Each time he woke gasping, sheets twisted around his legs, heart slamming, the taste of panic sharp on his tongue. By 6:30, he gave up on sleep entirely. Gray morning light filtered through the lace curtains. He sat cross-legged on the canopy bed, took up the wand one more time, and made dozens of fresh attempts. New angles, new wishes. He even tried wishing for entirely different things, testing whether the wand held any power at all. But it lay dead in his hands, nothing more than a plastic toy with a glittery star, hollow and ordinary. The shower was the worst part. He stood beneath the hot water and saw everything. Without clothes, without any layer of fabric to soften the reality, his new body was completely, undeniably revealed. The narrow shoulders, the full, rounded chest, the pinch of his waist and the flare of his hips, the long, smooth legs, the complete absence of anything male between them. This was the kind of body he had fantasized about, the kind of body he had imagined pressing himself against in the dark. And now it was his. He lived inside it. He breathed with its lungs and saw through its eyes and felt the warm water run down its curves, and the disconnect between who he was inside and what he saw outside was so vast it made him dizzy. He stepped out, dried off, and moved through the process of getting dressed in a strange, numb fog. His hands worked on autopilot, guided by a body that knew things his mind had never learned. He pulled on a pair of white thong panties without thinking, adjusting them at the hips with a practiced tug. A shelf bra came next, his fingers finding the clasp behind his back and fastening it on the first try. He did not remember learning how to do that. He chose a pair of cropped jeans from the closet, the kind that ended just below the knee. They hugged his curves in a way that would have made his old self stare, but at least they were not a skirt. That felt like a small victory. For the top, he selected a white tank top with wider straps and a lower neckline. It was less overtly feminine than the lacy options hanging beside it, though on his new figure, even a paper bag would have looked alluring. The makeup happened almost by itself. His hands reached for the right products in the right order. Foundation. A light touch of blush. Mascara applied with steady, practiced strokes. Lip gloss smoothed on without a mirror. His fingers braided a section of hair, pinned it back, let the rest fall in loose curls around his shoulders. He watched himself do all of it with a detached fascination, the way a passenger watches the scenery from a train window. His body remembered routines his mind had never experienced, the same way it had instinctively clutched the purse all evening, the same way his hips had swayed naturally in heels, the same way his legs had crossed automatically when he sat down in the theater. Ellie's body knew how to be a girl, even if Danny's mind was still screaming that he was not one. He did not need to think. His body simply knew, and his hands simply followed. Danny sat at the kitchen table and stared at the plate his mother had set in front of him. Scrambled eggs, toast with butter, a glass of orange juice, a perfectly normal breakfast that he could not bring himself to touch. His stomach was a clenched fist. Every bite he attempted turned to chalk in his mouth. His mother watched him push the eggs around with his fork, and her expression shifted from patient to concerned. "Ellie, you need to eat. She set down her coffee mug and leaned forward. I know all the girls you see in magazines and movies are thin as a rail, but that shouldn't define how you see yourself. You're a real girl, a young woman, and starving yourself isn't healthy. Please eat something. Okay, Mom, Danny said quietly, forcing down a small bite of toast. They were alone. Lily was upstairs, and his father had already left for the morning. The kitchen was warm and still, filled with the soft hum of the refrigerator and the scent of fresh coffee. His mother sat across from him with her hands wrapped around her mug, radiating the same steady, gentle presence she had always carried. She had always been kind, always been the one Danny could turn to when things fell apart. He was completely out of options. The wand was useless. Lily remembered nothing. Reality itself had been rewritten, and the weight of carrying this secret alone was crushing him from the inside out. Mom, he said. Yes, dear? I wanted to talk to you about something. Sure, Ellie. You know you can talk to me about anything. Danny nodded slowly. His fingers tightened around his fork. This was going to be the hardest conversation of his life, and he was not even sure he could get through it. I don't know how to say this, he began. His voice wavered. I don't know if you'll understand, but somehow I changed. I mean, I didn't used to be like this. I used to be... He trailed off. How could he finish that sentence? How could he look his mother in the eye and tell her that he used to be her son? That the daughter she loved, the girl she had named Ellie, the young woman she had raised and nurtured and helped with makeup last night, had only existed since yesterday evening? She would think he had lost his mind. His mother reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her smile was warm and knowing. I know, dear, she said gently. It's completely normal to feel the way you do. We all go through it. When I changed from a girl into a woman, I felt confused too. Everything shifts so fast at your age. Kids today grow up in such a hurry. You try to act like you're 21 when you're still a teenager. She squeezed his fingers. Don't feel like you have to rush through this time, Ellie. You should enjoy being a girl. Yes, you're becoming a woman, and that can feel overwhelming. But this is a special time in your life. Trust me, someday you'll look back on your girlhood with real fondness. She stood up, came around the table, and wrapped Danny in a hug. Her arms were warm and strong, and smelled like coffee and lavender. She held him the way she had held him 1,000 times before, chin resting on top of his head, one hand rubbing slow circles on his back. My little girl is growing up, she murmured. Soon you'll be a woman too. Danny broke. The tears came fast and hard, spilling down his cheeks before he could stop them. This was not the conversation he had been trying to have. It was not even close. Being a girl was bad enough. The last thing he wanted to hear was that womanhood was waiting just around the corner, ready to pull him even deeper into a life he had never chosen. There, his mother whispered, dabbing his cheeks with a napkin and pressing a kiss to his forehead. It's okay, sweetheart. Everything is going to be just fine. But it was not going to be fine. Danny knew that with absolute certainty as he climbed the stairs after breakfast, wiping his red-rimmed eyes. He could not tell his mother the truth. She would never believe him. And he certainly could not tell his father. The man would probably have him committed. Even Lily, the one person who had actually caused all of this, lived in a reality where Danny had never existed. One last thread of hope remained. Not the wand itself. That useless toy still sat on his desk, dead and hollow. But maybe Lily was the key. Maybe the magic lived in her, not in the plastic and glitter. If he could get her to play the right game, to hold the wand again, to stumble into the right words in the right moment, something might shift. The power had come through her once. Perhaps it could come through her again. He found her in her bedroom. The butterfly wings were gone today, replaced by a pair of oversized glasses with no lenses and a cardigan that hung past her knees. She had arranged every stuffed animal and doll she owned in neat rows across the floor, each one facing a small chalkboard she had propped against the wall. "Hey, Lily, want to play fairy princess?" Danny asked, trying to keep his voice light. "I'm free all morning." "No," Lily announced firmly. She adjusted her fake glasses with an air of great authority. "Today I am playing school teacher. This is my class." She swept her hand across the rows of attentive plush students. "Would you like to be one of my students too?" She looked up at him hopefully. "I'll pass on that," Danny said. He walked back to his room and closed the door. The last thread had snapped. Lily had moved on to a new game. The fairy princess phase was over, and with it, any chance of coaxing the same magic out of her again. The wand sat on his desk, where he had left it, just a cheap toy with peeling glitter, and it was never going to work again. He was going to be stuck in a girl's body for the rest of his life. The realization settled over him like a heavy blanket, smothering everything beneath it. How could he live like this? How could he walk through the world day after day as Ellie? How could he go to school on Monday, sit in class, walk the hallways, eat lunch in the cafeteria, all while wearing this body, this face, these clothes? Everyone would see a pretty girl. Everyone would call him Ellie. Everyone would treat him exactly the way boys treated girls, and he would have to endure it, smile through it, pretend that it was normal. Danny sat on the edge of the canopy bed and stared at the floor. A dark, heavy thought pressed down on him. He was not sure he wanted to face even one more day if every single one of them was going to be lived as Ellie. He pushed the thought away. It scared him almost as much as the transformation itself. It was just before noon on Saturday. The morning stretched behind him like a wasteland. He flipped through television channels and found nothing. He looked around his room and saw nothing that interested him. Girls' magazines fanned across the nightstand, full of fashion tips and celebrity gossip. Romance novels lined a small shelf above the desk, their spines creased from reading. Clothes filled the closet in an explosion of color and fabric. None of it was his. None of it belonged to the person he actually was inside. He felt lost, aimless, adrift in a life that fit someone else perfectly, but fit him not at all. Then he heard a knock at the front door downstairs. His mother's footsteps crossed the foyer. The door opened. "Hi, Mrs. H." Ryan's voice floated up the staircase, warm and familiar, and every muscle in Danny's body seized. Ryan was here. He had come over just as Amber used to drop by on Saturday afternoons, unannounced and full of easy confidence. Danny's first instinct was to throw open the window and climb out, drop to the ground, sprint across the yard, disappear into the neighborhood, and never come back. How could he face his former girlfriend again? How could he look at that face, Amber's face rebuilt in masculine angles, and pretend to be the adoring girlfriend who had whispered words of love in a dark theater? And worse, far worse, was the promise he had made. The vow? "Tomorrow," he had said. "Tomorrow we will go all the way." And tomorrow was now today. Danny stared at the window. The drop from the second story was not that far, maybe 15 feet to the grass below. He could land in the bushes. He could run. He turned around. Ryan stood in the doorway of his bedroom, leaning against the frame with one shoulder, hands in his jacket pockets. Those blue eyes, Amber's blue eyes, found Danny's face and softened with affection. "Come on, babe. We're getting out of here," Ryan said, reaching for Danny's hand. Before Danny could protest, before he could stammer out an excuse about feeling sick or needing to stay home, Ryan's warm fingers closed around his and pulled him gently but firmly toward the stairs. Danny's mother smiled from the kitchen doorway and waved them off with a dish towel. "Have fun, you two! Curfew is 10:30, Ellie!" And just like that, Danny was outside, blinking in the bright Saturday sunlight, being led to the red convertible parked at the curb. Ryan opened the passenger door for him. Danny sank into the leather seat, and the door clicked shut. Seconds later, they were racing down the road with the top down, warm wind whipping through Danny's long blonde hair, pulling loose strands across his face and tangling them with his earrings. He hated to admit it, but the sunshine felt good. The fresh air felt good. After a sleepless night in that suffocating pink bedroom, staring at the ceiling and failing with the wand over and over, being outside was a relief, even if the circumstances were a nightmare. "My parents are gone for the weekend," Ryan said casually, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console close to Danny's knee. "We have the whole place to ourselves." Danny's stomach clenched. He knew exactly what Ryan was implying. The promise from last night hung between them like a lit fuse. Today was tomorrow. The vow had come due. They pulled into the driveway of a large house on the east side of town. Amber's house, Danny realized, though everything about it had shifted subtly. The flower boxes were different. The car in the garage was different. But the layout, the neighborhood, the big oak tree in the front yard, all of it matched his memories with eerie precision. They went inside, and Ryan locked the door behind them. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home made Danny flinch. "My folks have some stuff to drink," Ryan said, heading toward the kitchen. "Want something?" "No," Danny said quickly. He wanted a drink badly, something strong enough to blur the edges of this entire situation. But he was underage, and more importantly, he could not afford to let anything dull his judgment. Not here. Not alone with Ryan in an empty house. He needed every scrap of clarity he possessed to resist whatever came next. Ryan shrugged and poured himself a glass of water instead. He leaned against the counter and studied Danny with a thoughtful expression. "I have something I need to tell you," he said. Danny's guard went up instantly. "Yes?" "I have a secret," Ryan continued. His voice had dropped, taking on a weight that did not match the casual setting. "Something I've been wanting to show you for a while now. Something special." "What is it?" Danny asked, curiosity cutting through his caution despite himself. Ryan held his gaze for a long moment. Then he said two words that stopped Danny's heart. "A magic wand." The kitchen went silent. Danny stared at Ryan. His pulse thundered in his ears. A magic wand. A real one. One that actually worked. If Ryan had a genuine wand, if the same kind of magic that had transformed Danny existed somewhere in this house, then everything could be undone. He could reverse the wish. He could get his body back, his life back, his identity back. "Please show me," Danny said, and the excitement in his voice was so raw and genuine that Ryan blinked in surprise. "Can I try it out?" "Sure," Ryan said, smiling at Danny's sudden enthusiasm. "It's upstairs. Come on." Danny did not need to be asked twice. He practically flew up the staircase, taking the steps two at a time, despite the heels he had somehow forgotten he was wearing. He even let Ryan take his hand on the landing, too focused on what waited ahead to care about the contact. They reached Ryan's bedroom door. Ryan pushed it open. The room was unmistakably Amber's, transformed just as everything else had been. Sports posters replaced the fashion prints Danny remembered. A guitar leaned against the wall where a vanity mirror used to stand. The bedspread was dark blue instead of lavender, but the bookshelf in the corner was the same, and so was the old wooden desk beneath the window. On the shelf above it, Danny noticed a small, weathered wooden box he had never seen before. It looked ancient and out of place among Ryan's modern things, like a relic from another century that had wandered into a teenager's room by accident. Ryan crossed the room and knelt beside the desk. He reached up to the shelf and brought down that same box. The brass hinges were tarnished. The clasp was shaped like a crescent moon. He set it on the desk and opened it carefully. Inside, resting on a bed of faded velvet, lay a wand. But it looked nothing like Lily's plastic toy. This one was carved from dark wood, smooth and polished by what must have been centuries of handling. It was slender, about 12 inches long, and at its tip a small crystal was set into the wood, pale and cloudy, like a frozen raindrop. My grandmother left it to me, Ryan said quietly. She was different. She knew things. She could do things that nobody could explain. Before she died, she gave me this and told me it would reveal its purpose when the time was right. He paused. I always thought she was just being eccentric, but a few weeks ago, I was holding it, and it started to glow. Just for a second. I felt something, like a current running through my hand. Danny could barely breathe. His eyes were locked on the wand. The crystal at its tip seemed to pulse faintly, or maybe that was just the light through the window. He did not care. This was real. He could feel it in his bones, in the same deep place where he had felt Lily's magic tear through him and remake his body from the inside out. Lily's toy had been a hollow vessel, a random object that caught a single flash of childish willpower and burned out. This wand was something else entirely. It carried a weight, a history, a living charge that hummed through the old wood like a heartbeat. Can I hold it? Danny whispered. Ryan hesitated. My grandmother said it responds to need. Real need. Deep need. Not just wanting something, but needing it the way you need air. Danny almost laughed. If any human being on the planet had a deep enough need right now, it was him. Ryan lifted the wand from its velvet bed and placed it gently into Danny's outstretched hands. The wood was warm, not the warmth of something that had been sitting in a box, but a living warmth, like holding something with a pulse. The crystal flickered. A pale light stirred inside it, faint as a candle flame seen through fog. Danny closed his eyes. He did not try to formulate clever words. He did not attempt a specific wish or a rehearsed phrase. He simply let the truth rise up from the deepest part of himself, the part that remembered who he really was, the part that had spent every moment since yesterday evening screaming in silence. He needed to go back. He needed to be himself again. Not because he hated girls, or because he thought there was anything wrong with being one, but because this was not who he was. This body, this name, this life. None of it belonged to him. He was Danny. He had always been Danny. And the person trapped inside Ellie's skin deserved to exist again. The warmth in the wand intensified. It climbed from his palms, up through his wrists, into his arms, spreading across his chest. The crystal blazed white, so bright that the light bled through his closed eyelids. He heard Ryan gasp somewhere far away. The tingling started, the same electric hum he had felt in the hallway outside Lily's room, but stronger now, deeper, running through every cell like a river reversing its course. Danny felt his shoulders widen, his chest flattened, his hips narrowed. The weight of the earrings vanished. The bra dissolved against skin that was becoming broader and firmer with every heartbeat. His hair retreated, climbing back up past his shoulders, shortening and darkening from honey blonde to sandy brown. His hands grew, his fingers thickened, his jaw squared, and the pretty softness in his face gave way to angles and planes that he recognized, that he knew, that were his. The light faded. The warmth receded. The wand went cool and still in his grip. Danny opened his eyes. He looked down at his hands. Large, square-nailed. A faded scar on his left knuckle from the time he had punched a locker in 9th grade. He touched his face and felt the familiar landscape of his own jaw, his own nose, his own brow. His chest was flat. His shoulders were broad. His feet were big and bare on the carpet because his heels had fallen away, far too small for him now. He was Danny again. The sob that broke out of him was so sudden and so violent that it bent him double. He pressed his fists against his eyes and cried harder than he had ever cried in his life. Great heaving breaths of pure relief that shook his entire frame. He was back. He was himself. The nightmare was over. When he straightened up, wiping his face with the back of his hand, he found himself looking not at Ryan, but at Amber. She stood where Ryan had been, her black hair falling past her shoulders, her blue eyes wide with confusion. She wore a leather jacket that was suddenly too large for her, and jeans that pooled around her ankles. "Danny?" she said. "What just happened? Why am I wearing these clothes?" She did not remember. Just like everyone else, her memories had been rewritten to match the original reality. She had no idea she had ever been Ryan. She had no idea Danny had ever been Ellie. To her, the world had simply flickered for a moment, like a television losing signal, and then returned to normal. Danny set the wand down gently on the desk. The crystal was dark now, spent, the last of its light used up. He looked at Amber, really looked at her, and for the first time, he did not see her as someone to pursue, to conquer, to brag about to the other boys at school. He saw a person with her own feelings, her own fears, her own reasons for wanting to wait. "Amber," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." She tilted her head, confused. "For pushing you," he continued, "for pressuring you, for acting like what I wanted mattered more than what you were ready for. I understand now, I really do, and I'm sorry." Amber stared at him for a long moment. Then a slow, surprised smile spread across her face. "Where did that come from?" she asked softly. Danny glanced at the wand one last time. "Let's just say I learned something important about what it feels like to be on the other side." He took her hand, gently this time, not pulling, not leading, just holding. And they walked downstairs together, into the bright afternoon sunlight, where the world looked exactly the same as it always had, except that Danny would never see it quite the same way again. When he got home that evening, well before curfew, Lily was waiting in the hallway. She wore her silver dress, her butterfly wings, and her crooked tiara. She held a plastic wand with a glittery star on the end of it, and she blocked his path with both arms spread wide. "Will you play with me?" she asked. Danny knelt down until they were eye to eye. He smiled. "Yeah, kiddo, I'll play with you." Lily's face lit up brighter than any magic wand ever could. "I'll be Celeste, the fairy princess," she announced, already bouncing with excitement. "And you can be the brave knight who saves me from the dragon." "The brave knight," Danny repeated. He grinned. "I can work with that." And he meant it.